you are probably not going to be able to retire. Not comfortably, not early, maybe not at all. The average American has $87,000 saved for retirement. At the standard withdrawal rate, that's $290 a month. That's not retirement. That's slowly running out of money. And here's the part that should genuinely make you angry. A medieval peasant, someone who lived in a one-room cottage, had no electricity, no running water, and a 1 in 3 chance of dying from plague, had a more secure retirement plan than you do right now. Not metaphorically, not as an exaggeration. Literally, a farm laborer in 1350 had multiple institutions, legally, contractually, morally obligated, to take care of him when he got old. You have a 401k, a prayer, and a financial system that profits from your confusion. So what did they know that we've completely forgotten? Here's the full story. To understand what medieval people got right about retirement, you first have to understand what retirement even meant before the modern world invented it. For most of human history, retirement as we think of it, stopping work at 65, living off savings or government checks, didn't exist. You worked until you couldn't, and then you depended on whatever safety net your community had built. The medieval world, roughly 500 to 1500 AD, was built almost entirely around community. The village, the guild, the church, the extended family. These weren't just social structures, they were financial ones. They were the institutions that decided whether you ate when you were old, whether you had a roof over your head, and whether someone would care for you when you got sick. Medieval Europe wasn't wealthy by any modern standard. Life expectancy was shorter, disease was everywhere, and crop failures could kill entire villages. And yet, within that brutal world, they built retirement systems with one quality that modern systems almost universally lack. They were collective. You didn't retire alone. You retired with your guild, your family, your community, and your church all contractually obligated to catch you. Here's exactly how that worked. Medieval retirement ran on 4 overlapping systems. Most people had access to at least 2. Some had all 4. The first was the guild. If you were a craftsman in medieval Europe, a blacksmith, a baker, a weaver, a carpenter, you belonged to a guild. The guild wasn't just a trade association. It was a mutual insurance system. Every member paid dues. Those dues went into a common fund. And when a member got too old or too sick to work, the fund paid out. Not as charity, as a right. You had paid in. You were entitled to draw from it. Some guilds went further. They built dedicated almshouses, essentially guild-funded retirement homes, where elderly members could live rent-free, with meals provided for the rest of their lives. The London Goldsmiths Company did this. So did the Mercers. So did dozens of guilds across Florence, Bruges, and Cologne. This is a pension, built and run by workers, for workers 700 years before most countries had national pension systems. The second system was the church. In medieval Europe, the Catholic Church was the largest landholder on the continent, and the church offered a product that anyone, not just guild members, could buy: a corody. A corody was a contract you signed with a monastery. You transferred to them a lump sum of money, or a piece of land, or a valuable asset. In exchange, the monastery agreed to provide you, for the rest of your life, with daily meals, accommodation, clothing, medical care, and last rites. The monastery was legally and morally bound to deliver. That is, in every meaningful sense, an annuity. You hand over a lump sum. You receive guaranteed income and support for life. The institution bears the risk of you living longer than expected. Corodies were so popular that monasteries occasionally oversold them, and the crown had to intervene to stop them taking on more obligations than they could honor. The third system was the family, and this one was formalized in ways that would surprise you. The maintenance agreement, or in Germany, the Altenteil, was a legally enforceable contract between a parent and their adult child. When the time came for a farmer or tradesman to step back from work, they would transfer their primary asset, usually the farm or the workshop, to the next generation. In exchange, the child signed a contract specifying precisely what the parent would receive for the rest of their life. Not a vague promise. A contract: 14 bushels of grain, a specific room in the house, firewood, meat, care during illness. These were negotiated, written down, witnessed, and enforceable in court. If the child failed to deliver, the parent could sue. The land could revert. The courts took these agreements seriously because the alternative, elderly people with no support, was a problem for the entire community. The fourth system was land itself. Land was the 401k of the medieval world. If you owned it, you could work it while you were young and rent it out as you aged. Medieval tenancy arrangements were designed with this in mind. Long-term leases that provided income for landowners who could no longer work the soil themselves. Let me put a real person inside this system so you can see how it actually felt to live it. Take a mason in 13th century London. Call him Thomas. Thomas joins the stonemasons guild at 16 as an apprentice. He pays a modest initiation fee and annual dues for the next 40 years. Those dues aren't just buying him access to work, they're buying him a guarantee. At 58, Thomas's hands begin to fail him. Stone carving requires precision his joints no longer allow. Under a modern system, Thomas is simply out of a job. He has whatever savings he managed to accumulate, which, as a craftsman in the 1200s, is not much. But Thomas isn't operating under a modern system. He goes to the guild. The guild assesses his situation, confirms he is genuinely unable to work, and activates his benefits. From the guild fund, Thomas receives a weekly stipend, enough to cover his basic needs. The guild has an almshouse outside the city walls. Thomas has priority access. The almshouse comes with a room, communal meals, and a garden. At the same time, Thomas's son has been working the small plot of land Thomas bought 20 years ago. Thomas calls in the maintenance agreement they signed when his son turned 25. The son provides the household contribution, firewood, grain, periodic cash payments, as contracted. And Thomas, who has been a member of his parish his entire life and has donated modest sums to the local friary over the years, receives priority for charitable distributions when harvests are poor. 3 separate systems, all triggered simultaneously. None of them depending on Thomas having been unusually clever or unusually disciplined with money. Now consider the contrast. The average American worker today has a single retirement system, their own savings. The median retirement savings for Americans aged 55 to 64, the people closest to retirement, is around $134,000. At the standard 4% withdrawal rate, that generates about $5,300 per year, or $440 a month. Thomas, the medieval mason, drawing from his guild fund, his maintenance agreement, and his parish network, was likely doing better than that. And Thomas didn't have a financial advisor. He didn't have a brokerage account. He didn't have to understand compound interest or asset allocation. He just had to participate in the institutions his community built. There's something else worth noting about the medieval system that rarely gets mentioned. It built retirement in at the asset transfer stage, not the savings stage. Modern retirement planning asks individuals to set aside money throughout their working lives, to sacrifice consumption now for security later. Medieval retirement planning transferred an asset, the farm, the workshop, the land, and converted that transfer into an income stream. The question wasn't, how much have you saved? The question was, what do you have that someone else wants? And can you convert it into a lifetime of support? That's a fundamentally different, and in many ways more reliable, way of thinking about financial security in old age. The medieval retirement system wasn't perfect. It wasn't equally available to everyone. Serfs at the bottom of the feudal hierarchy had far less access than guild members or landowners. Women's access depended heavily on their husband's position or their ability to enter a convent. And the entire system could collapse if a community was hit by plague, war, or famine, which medieval communities often were. But the structural insight embedded in medieval retirement is one that modern finance has largely abandoned. The idea that old age security is a community problem, not an individual one. Modern retirement shifted the entire burden onto the individual. Your 401k, your IRA, your savings rate, your investment choices. If you don't save enough, if you pick the wrong funds, if you retire into a market crash, those are your consequences to bear alone. The result is predictable. When retirement is an individual responsibility, a large portion of individuals fail at it. Not because they're irresponsible, but because the system requires every person to successfully execute a 40-year financial plan with no professional training, under constant economic pressure, while navigating a financial products industry that profits from their confusion. About 46% of Americans say they expect to work past age 65 not because they want to, but because they can't afford not to. A third of Americans have no retirement savings at all. The medieval guild member had a professional organization managing his retirement fund. The medieval farmer had a legally enforceable family contract. The medieval churchgoer had a 1,000-year-old institution with significant assets standing behind their corody. Modern workers have a 401k and a hope. There's a reason that the countries with the most robust modern retirement systems, the Netherlands, Denmark, Norway, have built collective structures on top of individual savings, mandatory pension funds, employer obligations, state guarantees. They've reintroduced, in a modern form, the medieval insight that retirement security is too important and too complex to leave entirely to individuals. The medieval world didn't get everything right, but they got this one thing right: no one should retire alone. The three medieval systems have modern equivalents. You can actually use them today. The corody, the monastery contract where you hand over a lump sum for lifetime support, is an annuity. Modern annuities work on exactly the same principle. You give an insurance company a lump sum. They guarantee you a monthly payment for the rest of your life, regardless of how long that is. They bear the longevity risk, not you. If the medieval church was the most trusted institution in Europe, the modern equivalent is an insurance company regulated by the state. Same structure, different institution. The maintenance agreement, the farm for lifetime support contract, is a reverse mortgage. A homeowner over 62 can transfer the equity in their home to a lender in exchange for monthly payments or a line of credit for the rest of their lives while they remain in the home. Medieval farmers would recognize this immediately. The Guild Welfare Fund is a pension, a defined benefit pension, the kind that's rapidly disappearing from the private sector but still exists for government workers and union members, is the closest modern equivalent to what guild members had. You contribute during your working years. The fund pays out based on tenure and contribution, not on how well you personally managed your investments. The medieval lesson isn't that we should go back to guilds and monasteries. It's that retirement security has always required collective structures, institutions that pool risk, enforce obligations, and ensure that individuals don't have to get everything right on their own. Every time you hear someone say, just invest in your 401k and you'll be fine, think about Thomas the Mason. His retirement plan didn't require him to be an expert. It just required him to be part of something. That's worth thinking about.